Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Awakened All 5 Chakras? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. People in the village called him a demon, a nuisance, a monster, a murderer. They hurled sneers, insults, punches, and kicks at him. He kept asking himself what he had done wrong. Why did his family act as if he did not exist? Why would nobody stop the abuse? Most painful of all was the silence. No one would acknowledge his presence. He wondered why he could not be accepted for who he was. His father, his mother, his sister, his brother, his grandfather, everyone hated him, and he knew it. So Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto left the Leaf Village to find acceptance, to find trust, and to find real friends. On a quiet hillside, applause and a whistle echoed only in the blonde boy's head. Kurama, the nine-tailed fox in human form, noted that Naruto's performance had been amazing, as always. Naruto brushed off the praise. Naruto wore a black jacket and pants with a red shirt and matching dark ninja sandals. His blonde hair was as messy as ever. One eye was covered in bandages because a villager had injured it. The other was a clear, crystalline blue. Kurama had red hair and 9 tails and was oddly dressed in a purple shirt and pants. Naruto had long since gotten used to Kurama's strange tastes. Kurama mumbled Naruto's nickname, and Naruto, with his very sharp senses, looked at him and asked what he wanted. Kurama thought about how it had been 5 years since they had left and admitted that Naruto had progressed. He might be stronger than anyone in the Leaf Village. Then Kurama asked if Naruto wanted to go back. Naruto answered nonchalantly that he probably did and asked when they would leave. Kurama suggested maybe tomorrow. Naruto agreed and teased Kurama when he objected to being called master. Kurama grumbled in response, and the two exchanged their usual bickering. Later, Naruto found 2 sleepy guards slumped outside the village gate. He muttered in disbelief that they called themselves guards. Kurama teased him telepathically about how to wake them. Naruto walked over and called out. The guards jolted awake and bumped their heads together, groaning in pain. Naruto dryly observed that they still called themselves ninjas while Kurama laughed. One of the guards, Izumo, began to ask Naruto his business, but Naruto interrupted and asked to see the village leader. Izumo and his companion looked shocked, then nodded and led Naruto toward the leader's office. As they walked, Naruto thought about how it had been 5 years he had left at 7 and now he was 12. Izumo knocked and was told to enter. The leader, Namikaze Minato, glanced up from his paperwork and recognized Naruto. Minato asked his guards to step outside so he could speak with his son in private. Izumo obliged and closed the door. Minato asked if Naruto wanted to live in the village again. Naruto answered that he did, but that he wanted his own apartment. Minato was surprised but agreed. He stipulated that Naruto would be joining the Ninja Academy. Naruto agreed. The next morning, Kurama called for Naruto to wake up. Naruto groaned a sleepy affirmative and went to the bathroom. After a short while he emerged, wrapped in a towel, then dressed in a black and blue outfit and sandals before going to the kitchen. Kurama continued to call to him, growing louder and more insistent, but Naruto ignored him while he fried eggs. Kurama finally shouted, and Naruto feigned innocence when he answered. Kurama mumbled to himself about the blonde boy and drifted off to sleep. Naruto packed the rest of his things, cast a protective barrier around his apartment, and dashed off to the academy. Naruto slipped in through an open classroom window and saw a brown-haired teacher arriving, surprised to see a student up so early. The teacher, Irika, asked what Naruto was reading. Naruto said it was a scroll. Irika inquired further about the scroll's contents and whether it was about jutsu. Naruto nodded in confirmation. Naruto cut in before Irika could ask, recalling a distant memory of training with Kurama. The memory opened on a sunny day in the forest, when the 9 tails had decided to train his host. First, the fox wanted to determine the boy's chakra nature. Kurama instructed Naruto to place his chakra on a special piece of paper that revealed affinities. Naruto followed the instruction and watched as the paper tore into 6 pieces. One piece darkened and turned to ash, another was sliced apart, a third glowed white, A fourth became drenched, the fifth dissolved and reappeared before vanishing again, and the final piece glowed with a dark light. Kurama muttered in disbelief, naming the results as fire, wind, light, water, soul, and darkness. Kurama explained that 3 of those affinities, soul, light, and darkness, were forbidden and extremely powerful. Back in class, the teacher called for quiet and announced a new classmate. Naruto bowed politely at the front of the room and introduced himself as Uzumaki Naruto, expressing a hope that everyone could get along. Kurama mocked his seriousness in Naruto's mind, and Naruto mentally told the fox to be quiet. The teacher invited questions. Hands shot up immediately and many students showed obvious interest. Naruto's siblings, Mishi and Kato, glared at him, upset that he was receiving so much attention. Several students asked personal questions, and Naruto answered some of them with short, blunt replies. A few classmates looked disappointed by his tone. When asked his age, Naruto replied that he was 12. Naruto finally snapped and demanded that someone ask a question not related to romance. A student asked where he had come from, and Naruto said he had come from his parents and that he had no specific village, traveling from place to place. The teacher then asked Naruto to sit in front of Sasuke and called on Sasuke to raise his hand. Sasuke only shrugged and refused to raise his hand, glaring at Naruto. The class found his lack of response amusing. Observing Sasuke, Naruto thought that the boy was definitely an Uchiha, talented though not on the same level as Itachi, and that he might become a mid-level ninja or higher if he did not let revenge consume him. Naruto wondered silently whether Sasuke understood why Itachi had killed their clan. The teacher began to explain how to control chakra. Kurama scoffed inwardly at the thought that they had not learned such basics yet, and Naruto frowned at the fox's antics. Iruka, following the village leader's instruction to test higher-level knowledge, called on Naruto and asked what the 5 forbidden chakra natures were. Naruto answered that they were soul, light, darkness, blood, and shadow. Kurama trailed off, reminding Naruto that he still had not practiced the blood jutsus and calling his name loudly. An ANBU announced that Uzumaki Naruto was needed by the Hokage immediately, catching everyone's attention, including the stoic Uchiha. Mishi and Kato felt dejected when their father had used the word immediately. They had never been summoned that way, and the thought that their father might be favoring Naruto briefly gave them hope. Naruto brushed the matter off and moved in a blur of motion to the Hokage's office. He addressed the Hokage politely, not meeting his father's eyes and not using any familial title. Minato paused, then asked whether Naruto intended to join the genin test held the next day. Naruto answered yes without emotion. Kushina gasped, Mishi scowled, and Kato glared. Kushina murmured Naruto's name and was internally pained that he had addressed her formally rather than as his mother. Naruto bowed politely and disappeared, the rustle of his clothing the only sign he had been there. Kushina cried out in anguish at having ignored him, and Mishi and Kato were overcome with guilt. Minato vowed privately that he would do whatever it took to bring the family back together. Later, Naruto and Kurama exchanged a few terse words. Kurama dozed off into a dream that revolved around food. On the day of the graduation exam, Iruka announced that a candidate needed to create 3 clones to pass. Kurama reacted loudly inside Naruto's mind, waking him, but Naruto asked to be woken again when it was his turn and drifted back to sleep. Kato and Mishi were called first and stepped forward with pride. When Naruto was called, he entered the testing area and immediately sensed a sensei whose presence was like snake chakra. Naruto suspected that this person followed Orochimaru, and Kurama confirmed the suspicion. Naruto produced 3 clones rapidly. Iruka smiled and directed him to receive a headband. Naruto took a black headband and offered a polite thank you to Iruka, deliberately ignoring the other sensei, Mizuki. He leaned close to Iruka to warn him to be careful, which left Iruka puzzled. Naruto shot a sharp look at Mizuki and then left the testing area. Outside, Minato and Kushina stood among the onlookers, smiling and praising their children. Naruto addressed Kushina with a formal greeting, which only deepened her internal hurt at the distance between them. He wished her a good day and left again in a swirl of motion. Kushina silently apologized to him in her heart. When he had a quiet moment with Kurama, Naruto complained of boredom. Kurama asked about his training. Naruto said his soul jutsus were finished and then dozed as the fox snored inside his head. The family reunion continued near a river. Minato had been instructing the children when he suddenly noticed Naruto on the surface of the water. Naruto performed an ice release technique that formed a solid layer over the river and then let the ice melt back into the water. He noted to himself that he needed to work on performing jutsu without obvious hand signs, especially in front of those with Byakugan or Sharingan. Kurama suggested practicing one-handed seals, and Naruto remarked that his family was watching and that he should join their training. Kushina asked Naruto if he knew his chakra nature. He answered politely and prepared to leave again, but Minato attempted to stop him. Naruto apologized and insisted the need to leave was pressing, disappearing in a swirl of motion. Later, Naruto muttered to Kurama in frustration about constantly running into the same people. Kurama, inhabiting a more humanoid form, suggested that perhaps fate was at work. Naruto joked awkwardly about the Hyuga and the name Niji. Kurama grumbled while eating and noted that their acquaintances had arrived again. Naruto, half to himself, admitted that he should have removed himself from the situation earlier. Naruto explained that the fox would disappear and return after an uncertain PRD, which he did not know precisely. Kurama responded irritably, asking whether Naruto was talking to himself as he watched the blonde rant. Kurama warned Naruto that Minato's family had entered the barbecue stand, and Naruto mumbled his agreement. Minato, Kushina, Mishi, and Kato all recognized Naruto's presence at once. Mishi blushed, clearly nervous, and asked to join them because the other tables were occupied. Naruto kept a nonchalant, emotionless facade and allowed them to sit. Kato and Mishi exchanged worried looks at their mother's animated appetite as Minato continued eating his ramen. The rest of the meal passed in awkward silence. Kurama laughed quietly in Naruto's mind, but Naruto ignored it. When the meal ended, Naruto bowed to his biological family and left the barbecue stand. Onlookers wondered why the Hokage's son had departed so suddenly. Kurama's laughter echoed in Naruto's thoughts, but the blonde headed home where he expected to be left alone. He knew this day was only the beginning of something intense. That night, under a darkening sky, the host of the nine-tailed fox trained in an isolated field. Kurama instructed him to focus his spiritual energy into his palm, cautioning him when there was too much and guiding him toward the correct balance. Naruto completed the technique and then slammed his hand to the ground to activate it. Naruto performed soul release, absorption, and the surrounding trees and plants trembled as their energy was drawn away in a dramatic anime-style display. Leaves and petals shimmered and drifted like dust before the scene calmed. Kurama, surprised by how quickly Naruto had mastered the technique, told him to return the energy. Naruto followed the instruction and used soul release, return. The environment recovered, with a few faint sparkles lingering in the air. Kurama gave a mock sigh at his host's potential, and Naruto responded with a sharp glare. Kurama tried to tease him, but Naruto's temper, partly inherited from his mother, warned the fox to stop. Naruto narrowed his gold-tinged eyes and asked incredulously whether Kurama was serious. Kurama, a little rattled, told him it was late and that he needed to sleep. They would meet Naruto's new team the next day. Naruto hoped he would not be paired with Sasuke Uchiha, whom he considered arrogant and fixated on revenge, nor with the loud pink-haired girl who seemed more fangirl than serious trainee. He acknowledged that both could be formidable if they focused on their training. Later, Naruto bit his thumb to draw a small amount of blood and opened the seal he had created, then returned to his modest house hidden in the forest, far from the village. The isolation suited him. It provided privacy and space to train whenever he needed. He entered quietly, glancing at the clock, which read 9:43 in the evening. Kurama said good night in a teasing tone, and Naruto ignored the fox as he settled in for sleep. Naruto thought the fox was quite bipolar. He told Kurama good night as he tried to sleep, but Kurama screamed Naruto's full name and demanded that he wake up before he unleashed his power and leveled the village. Naruto cracked one eye open and told Kurama that he did not care if the fox destroyed the village as long as he could keep sleeping. Kurama, still hoarse from yelling, insisted that Naruto would meet his teammates and sensei that day and ordered him to get up. Naruto told the fox to calm down. Kurama took offense and began coughing from overusing his voice. Later, while taking a shower, Naruto smirked and teased Kurama that he might be unable to use his voice for the rest of the day. Kurama accused Naruto of planning it. Naruto admitted it, and Kurama cursed and coughed some more. After a round of coughing from Kurama and laughing from Naruto, plus preparations and a heavy breakfast, both were ready for the day. Chatter and laughter filled the classroom when Naruto strode in, and a few students noticed him. The last Uchiha's fans were fawning over their favorite, and several girls began to crowd around Naruto, squealing and making a scene. Naruto gave them a small smile despite feeling overwhelmed. Kurama growled at the fangirls, but Naruto had limited how long the fox could use his voice that morning, so Kurama fell back to rest with his tails covering his ears. Kato and Mishi watched the attention Naruto received, each wishing for the same for themselves. The fox muttered that fangirls were a nuisance and returned to his nap. The brown-haired Chunin Irika entered the room and, seeing that no one was paying attention, used a loud jutsu to quiet the class. He announced that they would find out their teammates and Jonin senseis, then congratulated everyone on passing the graduation exam. Kurama persisted in Naruto's mind, and Naruto told the fox that talking inside his head was more entertaining than Irika's lecture. Kurama grumbled that he was not a circus animal and wondered aloud who he was. Naruto mocked him for it and then went quiet to focus on the lecture. Irika began calling teams. When he announced Team 7, he named Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura perked up at her inclusion and was thrilled, while several girls around her grew jealous. Sakura mentally gloated about being on the same team as Naruto and Sasuke, doing so to bother her rival Ino. Irika continued and added Uzumaki Namikaze Mishi and Uzumaki Namikaze Kato to the team. He explained that their senseis would be Hatake Kakashi and Uzumaki Kushina. Mishi thought it was great to have his mother and the copycat ninja as senseis and was pleased to be with his brother. Kato resolved to prove himself and make his parents proud. Sasuke fell back into brooding and quietly planned how to best confront his older brother in the future. Naruto, bored, started to doze. When the students began to ask where their senseis were, Sakura nearly tore her hair out with worry and Kato looked furious. Mishi calmly pulled out a book, and Sasuke tensed, ready to use a fire technique at the door if necessary. Naruto appeared to sleep through the commotion. The door opened to reveal a silver-haired, masked ninja and a red-headed kunoichi. Kushina had been holding Kakashi's ear as she ushered him in, her fiery hair and intense expression making her presence impossible to ignore. Kushina told them to meet on the roof in 5 minutes, then released Kakashi. Everyone scrambled to their feet, all except Naruto, who remained asleep. Kushina called Naruto's name, drawing the class's attention to him. Kushina snapped at the blonde to wake him. A soft pop announced Naruto's sudden disappearance into thin air. Her eye twitched and she used instant movement to get to the roof, with Kakashi following. The other genins took the long stairs. By the time they arrived, Kushina had Kakashi in a headlock, clearly upset over his earlier inappropriate conduct. Naruto was bent over a scroll, writing intently and ignoring the commotion. Kakashi clapped his hands and laughed nervously while Kushina fixed him with a fierce glare. He announced that they would begin introductions. The genins reacted to his forced cheeriness. Sakura stared at Sasuke with obvious admiration and asked how to introduce themselves. Kakashi intervened and told them to include likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams. Kushina's expression made Sakura shrink back, unnerved. Kakashi suggested that he demonstrate first. He introduced himself as Hatake Kakashi, but kept his personal details brief. Naruto then added that Kakashi had once been a member of the elite covert unit with the codename Dog. Naruto said that Kakashi enjoyed reading, cared for his dogs, respected the village leader and his late teammates, disliked Madogai's challenges, Kushina's lectures, and dwelling on his past, and that his hobbies included reading and a tendency to arrive late. Naruto also said that Kakashi's wish was to see his old teammates one more time so he could say goodbye. Kakashi was bewildered by how Naruto knew and Naruto kept it as a secret. Kushina introduced herself next, listing that she loved her family and Ichiraka ramen, disliked traders, fangirls, and anyone who hurt her family, enjoyed training and ramen, and wanted to help her children achieve their dreams. Kakashi turned to Sasuke with a teasing remark about his brooding nature. Sasuke introduced himself tersely, saying he liked only a few things and disliked many more. His hobbies were private, and his ambition was to restore his clan and avenge what had been lost. Sakura expressed that she admired Sasuke, clearly flustered. Mishi spoke next and described herself as someone who loved her family, ramen, and dango, disliked fangirls and people who hurt others, enjoyed training and spending time with friends and family, and aimed to become a respected captain in the elite covert unit like her mother and to bring her brother back to the family. Kato, the other blonde, said he loved his family, ramen, training, and pranks. He disliked waiting and anyone who would harm his family, enjoyed learning new techniques, and dreamed of becoming the village leader and surpassing his father. All eyes turned to Naruto, who had been quietly writing on his scroll. He said that he liked Kurama, Izumi, foxes, and training. He preferred not to list his dislikes, spent most of his time training, and kept his future plans to himself. Kakashi dismissed them with instructions to meet at 5 in the morning at Training Ground 7 and warned that skipping breakfast would be best. He then left in a swirl of leaves. Naruto mused that the instant movement trick was getting old and left with similar speed. The others headed home. Sakura lingered near Sasuke in a shy, awkward way before giving up and going home to prepare for the test. Later, Naruto practiced kicks on a wooden dummy and asked Kurama what the test the next day would be. Kurama, finally able to speak as he recovered, suggested it would probably be the bell test. They discussed team dynamics. Naruto thought Sasuke would refuse to work with others because of pride, that Sakura might only cooperate if Sasuke agreed, that Kato would likely be arrogant while trying to prove himself, and that Mishi seemed the most reasonable. Kurama observed that Sakura seemed fond of Naruto, and suggested strategies: persuade Kato, rely on Mishi, and give Sasuke a reality check. Naruto agreed and grinned at the idea of a simple plan: grab the bells and distribute them to his teammates. He then considered stopping by the training and interrogation building to consult with the instructors for advice. Kurama flashed an excited grin and agreed to the mischievous plan. Naruto set off toward the training facility, passing through the village. A few villagers had fainted at the intensity of his aura. Naruto grinned as he headed for the Tandai building, passing by the stunned faces. He had been practicing on the training trees, a blur of gold and black making dents in the wood, but his mood had a darker edge. News extracted from a recent prisoner had left him unsettled. With Kurama's help, Naruto had forced information out of several captives, bending their minds enough to learn what they knew without any graphic details. One of the prisoners had been Mizuki. The interrogation revealed that Mizuki had attempted to steal the forbidden scroll to send to Orochimaru, the snake sannin. Irika had intervened and ANBU had captured Mizuki, but they had only learned that he was a follower of Orochimaru. His mind had been protected by seals that seemed to have been placed by Orochimaru himself. Naruto's history with Orochimaru had been bitter. Orochimaru had tried to extract Kurama from him once, and the blonde had barely escaped. The snake had tracked him since, attempting ambushes that Naruto had avoided using the body flicker technique to slip away. Back in the present, Naruto was angry about what he had learned. Orochimaru had built a village, Otogekure, and was seeking an Uchiha vessel to take advantage of the Sharingan. Naruto suspected Orochimaru would strike during the Chunin exams, and he prepared himself for what that confrontation would demand. It was early morning at the training ground. Sakura complained that it was 6 o'clock and that the copycat ninja was late. She addressed Sasuke, who only grunted in agreement. Mishi and Kato murmured to one another while sharpening their kunai. The red-headed girl took after her father in calmness and had inherited a sharper edge from her mother. Kato had his mother's brashness and his father's knack for inventing techniques. Naruto remained quiet, focused on gathering natural energy. He could enter Sage mode but not Bijou mode. Kurama's chakra was too aggressive to blend easily with Naruto's calm flow. To combine them, either Naruto's chakra would have to become aggressive or Kurama's calm. The latter was unlikely, so the former remained a challenge. Kakashi arrived sheepishly, scratching the back of his neck and offering his usual lame excuse about a black cat crossing his path and getting him lost. Sakura and Kato called him a liar, and Kakashi shifted to a serious tone as he explained the test. Their goal was to take the bells from him and from Kushina. They had until noon. Mishi asked if only 4 bells meant one of them would fail. Kakashi confirmed that one would be sent back to the academy and told them to begin. The genin scattered into the forest to prepare. Sakura hid behind a tree with a handful of kunai and shuriken ready. Sasuke set a trap and watched for his chance. Kato twirled a kunai between his fingers, and Mishi crouched low, waiting. Naruto sauntered into the trees and settled under a broad trunk. Sasuke staged a dramatic call for help that sent Sakura into a faint when she rushed out and believed him in danger. Kakashi suppressed a sigh and took in Sakura's reaction with mild disbelief. Mishi launched a wind-style technique only to be caught by Kushina's quick defensive moves. The apparent Mishi was dispelled in a cloud of smoke to reveal the real Mishi hidden above, and Kushina used ninja wire to secure her to a tree before moving on. Sasuke formed a series of hand signs and unleashed a large fireball technique. Kakashi vanished and then reappeared, using the terrain to his advantage. He pulled Sasuke down into the earth, leaving only his head visible and demonstrating the Jonin's tactical skill. Kato attacked with a water shuriken while his mother blocked with precise kunai throws. A kunai grazed him and, after creating a shadow clone, he attempted a Rasengan. The Rasengan, incomplete even with Kurama's chakra influencing him, dissipated before it could land. Kushina used ninja wire to restrain him in turn and went searching for the remaining challengers. Naruto sat beneath the tree, scribbling notes on a scroll as he considered the problem of Edo Tensei. He reasoned that the village needed either a deeply destructive force or a master of seals to counter the technique. A seal master seemed the more practical option. Kurama, however, hissed its preference for being released, urging chaos in its own brash way. Naruto resisted the temptation, focusing instead on seals and strategy. A soft voice announced that Naruto had been found. He looked up to see a smiling figure approaching. The smiling figure was his biological mother, Kushina. Kakashi stood behind Naruto, both wearing unsettling smiles, though Kakashi's expression was mostly hidden by his mask. Naruto returned the smile and told them it was time to begin the match. Silence settled over the training field as the pair regarded Naruto's grin. Naruto opened the match by unleashing a powerful wind technique that sent sharp air blasts toward them. Kushina dove aside, and Kakashi followed. Both were surprised by the power of a genin's technique and by Naruto's calm, confident demeanor. Kushina responded with a sweeping water attack, but Naruto used a substitution technique to leave a log in his place. When Kushina realized she had trapped a log instead of her son, she cut her chakra and the log toppled onto Kakashi. Kakashi hopped in pain and complained loudly, while Kushina admitted she had intended the mishap as a light punishment for Kakashi's well-known bad habit of reading adult novels. Naruto wondered at his mother's formidable streak of toughness, and the fox spirit inside him emitted a gleeful sound at the spectacle. Naruto pressed the assault with a great fire technique. Kakashi raised a defensive water wall to counter, and Kushina leapt back, retreating into the treetops. Kakashi complained inwardly about being left alone with Naruto, who seemed eager to press the advantage. Naruto closed the distance to Kakashi with slow, methodical steps and a teasing smile, then taunted Kushina to let him have some fun with her former student. Kushina felt a chill at the look on Naruto's face, which combined qualities she recognized in several stern figures she knew. She dodged a sudden barrage of shuriken with quick reflexes. Kushina admitted to herself that Ibiki's warning about Naruto's intensity had merit. Naruto then joked about the fox wanting to come out before teasingly lifting the 4 bells he had taken earlier and dangling them in front of his teachers. When both instructors reacted in shock, Naruto explained that he had seized the bells while they were distracted by his act and that he felt the need to vent by paying a visit to the torture and investigation unit to calm himself down. He then disappeared in a blur. Later, Kakashi surveyed the results and declared that only Naruto had secured a bell. Sakura and Kato remained tied and defeated, Mishi was calm and unbound, and Sasuke had somehow slipped away. Everyone reacted with surprise at the outcome. Kushina confessed a strange mix of pride and embarrassment, pride at Naruto's skill, shame at being outmaneuvered by a 12-year-old. Naruto then tossed the 4 bells to Mishi, Kaito, Sasuke, and Sakura and collapsed onto the ground to write in the scroll he always carried, drawing another seal as he worked. When the others stared, Naruto smirked at their flushed faces and asked what was wrong. Mishi asked why Naruto had given the bells away instead of keeping one to pass the test himself. Naruto shrugged and explained that he did not care about ranks or titles. Academy student, Chunin, he intended to pursue his own hidden dream regardless of his official status. He even mentioned, as a possibility, joining another village if it suited his goals. When Kakashi asked where Naruto might go, Naruto answered with an expression that made further questions seem unwise. When Sakura asked why he had done it, Naruto explained that the test was about more than individual success. It was about teamwork and looking beneath the obvious. He reminded them that a ninja must see what lies beyond the surface and that the structure of the test itself, the number of bells versus the number of participants, was designed to teach that lesson. The others reacted with a mix of embarrassment and understanding as the point sank in. Meanwhile, Kushina and Kakashi were enjoying themselves. At least they did not have to go through another long explanation about the test. Naruto, Kakashi, and Kushina exchanged embarrassed looks and denied any exaggeration. Naruto sighed and reminded everyone that there was such a thing as teamwork. Mishi whispered that Dove was at point B. Sasuke grunted and acknowledged that Emo was at point C. Sakura gushed that Blossom was at point E and praised Sasuke in an admiring tone, which made the others exchange awkward looks. Kaito reported that Fox was at point G. Kushina, sounding a little strict, told Kaito to be alert at all times because no one knew when or where the enemy would appear, and she indicated that Redhead was at point F. Kakashi named Scarecrow at point H, then asked Naruto for his position. Naruto declared that Secretive was at point A, announced that he had the target, and cradled Tora the cat, who purred in response. Everyone left their positions and gathered in the clearing where Naruto held the brown cat. Tora pressed against his chest, and Sakura reacted with an excited squeal at how cute Naruto looked with the animal. Kushina declared the Catch Tora mission complete and suggested they head to the Hokage's office to request another mission. As they walked toward the Hokage's office, many civilians gave them curious looks, which the team ignored. At the office, Kaito flung the door open and he and Mishi greeted Iruka cheerfully, startling him. Kakashi reported casually that Team 7 had completed the mission and asked for another D-rank assignment. Minato scanned the available tasks and listed weeding, river trash removal, dog walking, and repainting an old house. After a brief discussion, the team decided to take all 4 tasks, though Naruto showed little interest and Sakura remained distracted by her admiration for Sasuke, who continued brooding. For the first task, weeding, Sakura complained that it was the most boring assignment and attempted to flatter Sasuke with exaggerated admiration, which he received with a grunt. Kaito finished his weeding area first and boasted to his mother, while Mishi countered that she had finished slightly earlier. The two siblings argued about who finished first until Kushina interrupted and claimed she had actually finished first. The children accused her of cheating, and Kushina smiled in a teasing, predatory way that quickly ended the dispute. On the river trash removal task, Sakura asked why they were assigned to clean a river. Kakashi reminded her that it was their mission and ordered them to begin. Kaito protested that these were chores and demanded a C-rank mission. Naruto explained that a genin team must complete 30 D-rank missions before they could receive a C-rank, or their sensei could decide they were ready earlier. Kushina and Kakashi did not think the team was ready. Mishi complained that she would never live to finish 30 missions. For dog walking, Kaito begged for the biggest dog, but Kushina refused. Naruto heard Kurama teasing him internally and replied with a mocking tone before the fox demurred. During the walk, Kaito was yanked by an eager dog toward an old mine entrance, and he cried out for help. Kushina and Mishi chased after him and rescued him, scolding him for his stubbornness. Kakashi and Naruto exchanged resigned looks while Sasuke dismissed the scene with a grunt and Sakura reacted with another excited squeal. When they began repainting an old house, Kaito complained that the job felt more like rebuilding than repainting. Kushina suggested they treat it as training and did not get involved directly. Kakashi was reading an adult novel in a corner until Kushina gave him a sharp warning, and he quickly put the book away, embarrassed. Naruto used the shadow clone technique to produce multiple copies and ordered them to finish the work. Mishi and Kato also produced clones to help, and together the clones completed the repainting in less than an hour. Kushina expressed dismay that their training had been minimized by such tricks, and Kato demanded a C-rank mission. Mishi finally lost her temper and shouted for them to be quiet. Sasuke grunted, Sakura reacted again with an admiring outburst, and Kakashi, who had been reading, chuckled until Kushina threatened him into silence. Naruto observed the chaotic team dynamic and thought that they were a truly dysfunctional team. Kato grumbled that it better be a C-rank mission. Naruto thought the team looked dysfunctional. Mishi finally lost her patience and told everyone to shut up. Sasuke grunted, which made Sakura squeal and launch into her usual speech. Kakashi chuckled over his adult novel, and Kushina warned him to behave. Naruto thought the team was indeed dysfunctional. Minato rubbed his temples as his son insisted on a C-rank mission. He asked Kakashi and Kushina for their opinions. Kakashi, speaking for both himself and Kushina, said he believed the team was ready and that they needed experience outside the village. Minato agreed, straightened the files, and asked his clerk to send their client in. An old man entered the office smelling of alcohol and carrying a bottle of sake. Naruto noted silently that it had to be a C-rank. This man did not look like someone who could afford anything higher. The man looked uncomfortable under their stares but forced a grin. Kushina muttered a few rude descriptions under her breath, and Sasuke, Kato, Sakura, and Mishi glared back at him. Sakura objected when the man made fun of Sasuke. When the client's next crude remark came, the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Kushina cracked her knuckles, preparing to strike, but in a flash Naruto had stepped in front of the man with a kunai held against his throat, his expression hard and his one visible eye cold. Naruto pressed a finger gently to the man's lips and warned him to be quiet, making the client visibly tremble with fear. Minato called Naruto back to his place. Naruto complied at a single glance. Minato introduced the client as Tazuna and explained that he needed escort to the land of waves. Tazuna, slurring slightly, emphasized that the team had to protect him with their lives. Naruto inferred that Gato was after Tazuna because the man was building a bridge that could bring prosperity to the land of waves. Gato, intent on keeping the land under his control, would do anything to stop it. Kakashi said they would meet at the gates in an hour and then left. Naruto jumped from the window and ran toward his home. Naruto checked his gear with methodical thoroughness. Clothes, water, food, scrolls, books, twin swords, and a first aid kit. He packed a tent, sleeping bag and extra weapons, sealing the lot into a scroll and slipping a few tools into his backpack. He remembered to grab a few vials of antidotes and sealed those as well. Kurama sighed at Naruto's excessive preparations but agreed to stay ready. Kakashi arrived late to the meeting, offering a flimsy excuse about a black cat crossing his path. Kushina warned him that if he was late again she would destroy his beloved adult novels one by one. Kakashi swallowed nervously and backed away. Tazuna muttered to himself about whether he would be safe. Naruto listed the group's strengths and weaknesses in a dry voice, saying they had a variety of personalities and skills and that they would do their best. Tazuna continued to worry but accepted that he had come to the only place he could. Team 7 and their client set out and walked for hours under a bright sun. The journey was uneventful except for small moments of tension. Tazuna remained on edge, aware someone was following him. He noticed Naruto's brief, knowing glance and asked if Gato was after him. Naruto confirmed that Gato wanted the bridge stopped and hummed a tune to ease the man's nerves as they continued on. Tazuna observed that he had been right and then asked anxiously whether Naruto was going to tell his comrades, fearful that if the blonde revealed anything the bridge's construction would be jeopardized. Naruto snorted and dismissed the idea, walking ahead of the others. Tazuna had to hurry to keep up so their conversation could remain private. Naruto explained that he was bored of D-rank missions and wanted some excitement in his life. As he spoke, he noticed a suspicious puddle in the bright sunshine and shook his head at the careless behavior of some ninjas, thinking of Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon hiding under a square box and at how odd it is to find a puddle where it had not rained for days. He produced a kunai and attached an explosive tag while Kushina, Kakashi, and Sasuke began to take notice. The others seemed indifferent. Naruto threw the kunai, and when it detonated, chains burst from the puddle to reveal two ninja assailants, at least Chunin. Naruto recognized their faces from his travels outside the village. Kato screamed as his mother was struck and collapsed, and Mishi looked terrified. Sakura cried out that their teacher seemed to have been harmed. One of the attackers, whom Naruto later identified as Meizu, laughed at the panic spreading through the genins. Naruto chided Meizu and Gozu for underestimating him. The two assailants spun around and froze when they met Naruto's intense, focused gaze and expression they had first seen nearly 3 years ago during a confrontation that had left them shaken. Gozu stammered in fear and tried to back away, but Naruto's attention was fixed on them like a predator on its prey. Naruto pointed out that he remembered them and demanded to know why they accepted Gato's offer. Meizu cowered and admitted that they had agreed because they had been promised a large sum of money in exchange for killing the bridge builder. Naruto clicked his tongue in annoyance, thinking that Gato, who was notoriously greedy, was unlikely to actually pay them. Kurama teased him in his thoughts that Naruto would owe explanations to his teachers for the display he had made, and Naruto muttered back that Kurama was hardly less sadistic. Kakashi leaped down from a treetop and interrupted, announcing that they now understood what the two were after. Kushina told Naruto to stop, and Sakura cheered with relief when Kakashi proved unharmed. Kato and Mishi were relieved as well when their mother regathered herself after the attack. Sasuke showed mild acknowledgement with a short grunt. Kushina explained that the apparent wounds on their teacher had been a substitution technique, and then turned to Naruto to say they needed to talk. Naruto tersely added that they needed to talk to Tazuna as well. Kakashi asked how Naruto knew the two attackers, and Naruto explained that a child who left the village at 7 and returned 5 years later tended to gather many experiences with outlaws and thugs. Kushina warned that Tazuna might have B-rank or higher-level ninjas after his life. Naruto admitted he knew but had not told them before because he was tired of D-rank missions and bored. He described the impoverished condition of the Land of Waves and how its daimyo could not even afford a B-rank mission. Kushina asked the team to vote on whether to continue, and Sasuke's grunt, Sakura's agreement, Kato's eager nod, and Mishi's reluctant consent settled the matter. Kakashi smiled with his eyes closed and confirmed they would continue the mission. The boat glided quietly across the water so their approach would not be noticed. When the rower paused and said this was his stop, he led them ashore and wished them luck with the bridge. They thanked him and stepped onto solid ground, moving with extra caution for possible enemies. Tazuna faced them to speak when a white rabbit hopped from the bushes toward them. Naruto recognized the movement as a distraction. Kakashi and Kushina dove instinctively to protect the others. A massive sword whistled past their heads, close enough to have been deadly if they had not moved. The attacker growled that now he understood why the two earlier bandits had failed, then announced he recognized Kakashi of the Sharingan and the red-haired youth known by some nicknames. Kakashi's expression hardened as he named the man before them, the feared Momochi Zabuza. Zabuza was one of the 7 swordsmen of the Mist, known as the Demon of the Mist. He let out a laugh and demanded the bridge builder be handed over, warning that he would otherwise kill them. Kushina tightened her grip on her sword and refused to give him up. Kakashi assumed a defensive stance and readied a kunai. Zabuza pointed his massive blade and performed hand seals, then unleashed the mist technique. Thick fog enveloped the area, and Kushina and Kakashi immediately went on high alert, straining to locate their enemy. Kakashi ordered a defensive formation to protect the bridge builder. The genin snapped to attention and took their positions. Tazuna and Sakura shivered, anxious about their chances. Naruto mocked Zabuza, saying there was actually one more swordsman present. Zabuza suddenly recognized Naruto and angrily warned him to be quiet, addressing the boy as someone he considered like a son. Naruto refused to be silenced and calmly executed a powerful wind technique that cleared the mist. When the fog vanished, Zabuza stood fuming and Haku smiled upon seeing Naruto. Haku embraced Naruto warmly, and Naruto returned the hug with a genuine, relieved smile, remarking that it had been a long time since they last met and asking how she and Zabuza were doing. Haku explained that her father had been grumpy for the past 3 years. Zabuza grumbled and then smirked, asking whether Naruto had become rusty. Naruto challenged him to a spar, grinning fiercely. Kakashi intervened and asked if they all knew each other. Zabuza, Naruto, and Haku each confirmed that they did, leaving the others, especially Tazuna, utterly bewildered by the sudden friendliness between former enemies. The younger members and onlookers exchanged exasperated looks. Some sighed in defeat, while Sakura squealed with fangirl enthusiasm over Sasuke. Zabuza quietly used the mist technique again to shroud the area. Naruto responded by unleashing a wind wave to disperse the fog and immediately followed with a fire technique. Zabuza countered by creating a water wall and produced 2 water clones as a distraction. Naruto adjusted and made 5 shadow clones, the smallest number he could manage, then launched a flurry of attacks. Zabuza commented on Naruto's massive chakra reserves, and Naruto retorted by blocking a large water dragon with an earth wall. Haku observed from the sidelines that they were exchanging jutsu as if they were playing, and everyone from Konoha shared the same confused thought. Kushina demanded an explanation. Naruto began by saying that they had met back in the village hidden in the mist when he was learning water techniques. Zabuza added that he had sparred with Naruto when the boy was 9, and despite the age difference the fight had ended in a tie. Zabuza had been teaching him ever since. Haku explained that after the 4th Mizukage had turned on bloodline users, the 3 of them had connected and traveled between villages, taking various jobs and training together. Naruto had gone on to travel other villages to learn more jutsu. The trio had not seen each other for 3 years until now. After finishing their exchange, Naruto suggested they head to the nearby man's house because he looked on the verge of fainting. Tazuna accepted and sat down in relief. They arrived at the house and Tazuna announced their presence, still wary of the former missing nin beside him. Zabuza asked a woman named Tsunami to open the door. She asked if these were the ninjas Tazuna had hired, and when he confirmed, she smiled and invited them in. Team 7, along with Zabuza, Haku, and Tazuna, entered the house. Kushina spoke loudly and ordered everyone to rest for the night and prepare for training the next day. Sakura, Mishi, and Tsunami ended up sharing a room. Sakura was initially unhappy to be separated from Sasuke, and Mishi was reluctant to be away from her family, but Kushina insisted they accept the arrangement, and they agreed reluctantly. Sasuke, Kato, and Tazuna shared another room. Kato complained about rooming with someone he saw as stern, but his mother threatened to withhold ramen, and he fell silent. Sasuke had been relieved not to be paired with a fangirl, only to find he would be sharing with a loud companion and a sleepy, occasionally drunk Tazuna. Kakashi and Kushina, both instructors, shared a room together. Neither had a problem with that arrangement. Kakashi kept his mouth shut unless he wanted to face the wrath of an angry Uzumaki woman. Zabuza, Haku, and Naruto were the last to sort out sleeping arrangements. Kakashi and Kushina had been wary and suggested Zabuza stay in their room, but Zabuza refused because he would not leave his daughter Haku alone. When the 2 sensei were alone, Naruto warned them that if Zabuza were ever to turn on everyone while they slept, Kakashi and Kushina would be the first to fall and the rest would be left unprotected. The trio did not mind their sleeping arrangements. They treated one another like family. Once they had settled down, Tsunami called everyone to dinner. Kato arrived at the table first. He always ate quickly. They offered a brief expression of thanks before beginning to eat. Dinner was comfortable. Kushina and Zabuza found common ground in their shared interest in swords and kenjutsu. Mishi and Kato complained about their roommates, which quickly turned into an exchange of glares and insults. Haku and Mishi fell into a conversation about hobbies and, with some embarrassment, the subject of boys. Tazuna and Tsunami were pleased to have a large family dinner again. Inari, however, sat in silence and seethed. Inari suddenly shouted that trying to defeat Gato was pointless and that heroes did not exist, and his outburst froze the conversation. A tense silence followed, punctuated by shifting chairs and clenched fists. Kurama muttered low in Naruto's mind. Naruto replied silently with a wry thought. Kato lost his temper and insisted they would win and that heroes did exist. Inari then shouted that they were all going to die in the end. Naruto answered with calm indifference, and Inari bristled at the bored look on the blonde's face. Kushina, understanding some of what Naruto had endured but angered by his apparent indifference, demanded how he could not care whether he lived or died. Naruto closed his eyes and explained that death was inevitable and that he could not pretend to stop it as if it were nothing. Zabuza acknowledged Naruto's pain but argued that such indifference was reckless. Haku quietly echoed Zabuza's concern. Naruto spoke about the life of shinobi. He said that they lied, cheated, killed, and betrayed to protect their villages and families. They fought for beliefs and sacrificed for loved ones. A shinobi's life was a battlefield, and danger was never far. He said peace could not be achieved while people fought for different ideals, and that conflict fed a cycle of love, sacrifice, hatred, war, and death. In the end, shinobi often gave their lives for what they believed in. Inari retorted that Naruto could not know their lives and suggested that shinobi life was comfortable and luxurious. Naruto's expression hardened as he reminded them that there were people born into fates they had no say in, 9 individuals who had been treated as outcasts and feared for what they carried within them. These were hosts to powerful beasts, people who had been used and shunned despite acts that had saved others. Naruto described how entire bloodlines had been persecuted, clans torn apart by war and fear, and how those with special gifts had been killed because others misinterpreted those gifts as curses. Sakura turned to Kakashi and asked whether what Naruto said was true. Kakashi confirmed that it was. Naruto continued, speaking of a single person forced to choose between 2 things he treasured most: the village or his clan. Kakashi and Kushina realized he was referring to a well-known painful sacrifice. Naruto explained that the man had chosen the village and had borne the guilt of destroying his family to prevent a greater conflict. He had lived with the hatred of others and the isolation that came with his choice, a sacrifice impossible for outsiders to fully understand. When the meal ended, Naruto thanked Tsunami for the food, gathered his dishes, and left to train in the night air, saying he would return at dawn. Kakashi wondered aloud how much Naruto actually knew. Sasuke, restless and curious, decided to speak with Naruto. He mimicked Naruto's action, stepped outside, and glanced back at his sensei for approval before closing the door. He took a deep breath and searched for Naruto's chakra. It was in the forest and not masked. Sasuke hesitated briefly over whether finding Naruto was a good idea, but his curiosity pushed him forward. Sasuke was halfway there when Naruto arrived in a whirlwind of fire. The blonde gestured for Sasuke to sit, and Sasuke obliged. Naruto sat cross-legged beside him and asked if Sasuke wanted to ask about the massacre of his clan. Seeing Sasuke nod and grunt, Naruto sighed and asked what he wanted to know. Sasuke asked softly if what Naruto had said about Itachi, his older brother, was true. Naruto confirmed that it was. He explained that Itachi had chosen the village and Sasuke over his clan, sacrificing his chance at a normal life to protect the village and Sasuke. In order to protect them both, Itachi had killed the other Uchiha. Sasuke asked why Itachi had not told him. Naruto explained that Itachi had been ill with an incurable disease and had wanted to shoulder the guilt himself and give Sasuke a path to avenge him. Sasuke pressed why Itachi had never told him. Naruto answered that there were personal reasons. Naruto then stood up, turned his back, and said that he was going to train. Naruto vanished in a whirl of feathers, his chakra masked. Sasuke sighed as he walked toward Tazuna's house with one thought repeating in his mind. Why? Kushina announced that today they were training, and Sakura asked what the training would be. Kushina declared they would practice tree climbing. Sakura pointed out that they already knew how to climb trees, which exasperated Kushina. Kakashi suggested a twist. This time they would climb without using their hands. Kakashi explained that Sakura should channel chakra to her feet and climb, the tricky part being estimating how much chakra to use to stay stable, which was part of chakra control. Sakura challenged Naruto to do it if he knew how. Naruto shrugged and walked to the tree. He channeled chakra to his feet and nonchalantly walked up, then stopped the chakra flow at the top. To let himself fall. He backflipped and landed safely, then explained to everyone how it worked. Most of the group stared in surprise. Naruto then strode toward a burly ninja and his daughter. Naruto asked Zabuza if they could spar. The two turned to Haku, who usually set rules to prevent the fight from getting out of hand. On this day, Haku asked only that they avoid killing each other. When Haku asked if she could join, they agreed. Naruto decided to face both opponents by creating a blood clone to fight Haku while he took on Zabuza. The narrator explained that a blood clone was a near-perfect copy infused with a person's blood and chakra, making it more resilient than an ordinary clone. Naruto addressed Haku playfully as he dodged a barrage of Sinbon needles and formed a series of hand seals. Haku elevated the fight by creating an array of ice mirrors to trap the blood clone. Naruto reacted by calling forth a powerful fire jutsu. Haku reinforced her mirrors with chakra to protect them from the flames and moved between them to confuse the clone. Naruto, trained as a sensor, tracked Haku's movements precisely, pulling up one of his twin swords to block Sunbon and throwing kunai when needed. He signaled that he was ready for Haku. At the same time, Zabuza swung his giant sword to start his duel with Naruto. Naruto pulled out his twin swords and charged. The two blades met in a flurry of parries and feints as both fighters searched for openings. As the fight intensified, they incorporated ninjutsu. Zabuza called forth a water dragon technique, but Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind him, unleashing a wind-based whirlpool technique that began to pull Zabuza toward it. Naruto then combined a fire jutsu with the vortex, turning it into a fire vortex that swept through the training ground. Zabuza yelled accusations at Naruto and managed a substitution to create distance, while Naruto simply answered that he was trying to win. Zabuza snarled and advanced with his sword leveled to strike. Naruto ducked and tried to counter, but Zabuza swatted aside the attack and forced Naruto's clone to disperse. Naruto used a substitution technique to evade and reappeared to finish a rapid series of hand seals. The clash continued as a swift, anime-style exchange of skill and strategy, with both sides using clever techniques and evasive maneuvers rather than graphic violence. Naruto completed his hand signs and prepared his next move. An opponent bellowed the lightning release, electromagnetic murder. Zabuza's eyes widened as he leapt out of the lightning's path and formed a new set of hand signs, unleashing the water release, great waterfall technique. Naruto drew his twin swords and crossed them into an X. The water dispersed, likely negated by seals on the blades. Zabuza warned that only taijutsu and kenjutsu were allowed, calling him a brat, and Naruto confirmed that he was limiting himself to those forms of combat. During training with Haku, Naruto complained that a strike had hurt, addressing Haku as his sister, and he clicked his tongue in irritation at the scatter of needle darts coming his way. He acknowledged to himself that his reaction time needed work, then activated the hidden mist technique, and mist immediately enveloped the area. Haku went on full alert and just managed to sense an incoming barrage of throwing knives and throwing stars. She froze when she noticed explosive tags attached to many of the weapons. The mirrors detonated in blinding flashes, forcing her to backflip through the air and land safely. Naruto invited Haku to keep training in a cheerful, competitive tone. At lunchtime, the other genin had somehow climbed into the tree. Sakura reached the top first due to her smaller chakra reserves. Mishi and Sasuke reached only halfway up. Kato tried repeatedly to climb and descend in frustration, only to land on his backside. Mishi and Kushina calmed him down. He finished last after taking only a few steps. Kushina explained that the increase in his chakra reserves was due to the Nine-Tails chakra sealed within him, which also accounted for his higher reserves. Kato was initially thrilled but then reminded of his poor chakra control and the exercises he still needed to do, which dampened his mood. Zabuza's spar with Naruto ended with Naruto victorious. Haku's spar, however, left her waking with a concussion and unable to remember the details. When she asked what had happened, Naruto greeted her with a mischievous smile and declined to explain. Haku decided not to pursue the matter, noting Naruto's gleeful and somewhat ruthless excitement during training. Kushina noticed the unsettling gleam in her other son's eyes and, disturbed by what might have happened, only silently hoped for everyone's well-being. Naruto told Kakashi and Kushina that he was going out to train. They acknowledged him with subtle nods. As he closed the door behind him, he breathed in the cold air and walked toward the forest, not noticing a crow with two blood-red eyes watching from the trees. The next morning, Kakashi asked Sasuke if he was all right and if anything was wrong. Sasuke replied that he was fine and that he was just thinking. Kakashi sighed and told him to come down for breakfast and that they would train again afterwards. Sasuke gave a short acknowledgement. At breakfast, Mishi asked where Naruto was, noting he had not returned since he left the previous night. Kato muttered that Naruto was probably dead somewhere, and their senseis shot him a stern look. Haku volunteered to check on Naruto. Zabuza started to tell her to finish her food first but then noticed her plate was already empty and rubbed his temples at how quickly she ate. Haku shut the door and walked toward the woods, expecting that Naruto was training to relieve stress. Haku called out for Naruto as she fiddled with a needle. When she received no answer, she grew concerned. As she prepared to throw a few needles, a hand clamped her mouth and another struck a pressure point, causing her to faint. The last things she registered were a large sword wrapped in bandages and a pair of glowing red eyes. In the instant before she lost consciousness, she thought of the Akatsuki. Zabuza demanded to know where Haku and Naruto were and strode from the house in a rage. He called their names and warned them not to cause trouble without reporting back. Mist thickened around him, laced with chakra he recognized. Kisame emerged from the fog, greeting Zabuza like an old acquaintance and mocking him for having adopted a child, a girl. Zabuza,